Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you wherever you are tuning in. For those who may be joining us for the first time, my name is Sam Robinson. I'm based in Jerusalem and I lead our international community resilience efforts through JReady, which is a unique partnership of the Jewish Agency for Israel and the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs. Most of you, judging by those who have registered, and we've seen the list, most of you have attended a number of JReady sessions in the past, webinars, seminars, trainings, and more. And it is so deeply gratifying to be able to see you here again. And we are really, really thankful for your ongoing friendship and collaboration throughout all of these years. So here in Israel, we are speaking at a moment of profound uncertainty. As you know, only recently we lived through an almost 6-week conflict with Iran. And even under this current ceasefire, we all understand how tenuous that reality is and how quickly things can change. And how in this region, calm can quickly give way into crisis in an instant. And we are also acutely aware of whatever happens here in Israel doesn't just stay here, and it impacts all of you as well. Actually, when I think of Chaim Weizmann, when he was sworn in as Israel's first president, one of the things he mentioned in his speech was that whatever we do or fail to do in this land casts either a great light or a great shadow on our entire nation. And what we see is time and time again, events in Israel reverberate far beyond our borders. We see that they shape political discourse and the social climate, security realities in Jewish communities all across the world. And what unfolds here, how it affects Jews, how they feel walking into synagogues in London, into university campuses in the United States, or any kind of communal public spaces in Paris, in Madrid, and far beyond. So really, this is the impetus behind the conversation today, and this is why it strikes such a strong chord with all of us. Before we dive right into the content, I am pleased, as always, to introduce and invite Ayelet Nachmias-Verbin, who is the chair of JReady and Fund for Victims of Terror at the Jewish Agency for Israel, to share a few opening words. Ayelet.
Thank you so much, and this is a good opportunity for me to thank the fantastic team of JReady. I always like to do it at the start. Nina Agnew, who is the Chief Director of Global Jewish Connections in the Jewish Agency, Sheila Gil-Rice, who is the Director of JReady, Samantha Robinson, and of course our own Lior Sharir, who's, thank God, not in Miluim at the moment, not on reserve, and we're very thankful for that. I speak to some of you. I speak to Louise, who's a close personal friend of mine, very often. And starting October 7th, by the way, on October 7th, she was one of the first people to write to me and ask me how we were. And it was very instantaneous to me and it was very obvious to me. I don't know even how that, in fact, the war was physically going on in Israel, but it was virtually in every other manner, and now, unfortunately, also physically going on in the Jewish communities around the world. And it is so challenging, and it is super important for me to let you know when we're here tonight with Daniel Aldrich, Estrella Bengio, Robert Ejnes, sorry, for not spelling your complete your name, your family name complete right, and Louise Jacobs. I want to say that we're very much with you. And I know that sometimes with everything that's going on here, it's not maybe you don't feel it enough. And it's very, very important for me to say in JReady, in the Jewish Agency, in the Ministry of Diaspora, who have been partnering with JReady for all this, for the past 2 years, it is super important for me to let you know that we're here with you and that we know that the crisis that you're experiencing is about real people, real communities, and challenges that maybe we never imagined once before that can, happen again. And I'm trying to be careful when I speak about the 1930s of last century, but unfortunately, situation has it, and reality is that, people in the UK, for instance, following what happened this week or last week, sorry, in Golders Green, are saying Jews in the United Kingdom are in a situation quite similar to what has happened in the 1930s. And again, in Israel, we're trying to be very careful on when do we use the terms that are concerning the Holocaust, especially following October 7th, which was probably, the most similar thing that we can ever, horror that we could have imagined. We know that there is huge pressure on the leadership, and this is why it's so important that leaders of your stature are here with us and, trying to share your experience. Because again, as Sam mentioned, it's going on in Europe, but it's also going in the USA. And we know what happened in Australia. We know what's going on in Canada and in South America. So it's very important that we have a chance to listen to what you have to say, because our purpose in JReady, we launched JReady almost 6 years ago, um, was very, very important for us. I think, Louise, you were actually one of the very first people that I introduced JReady to. Did we imagine? We never imagined that it would be so necessary to speak about emergency preparedness and to speak about resilience in the communities. Never have we imagined that. So, in spite of the fact that we are tonight with different countries, different communities, different governments, which is very, very important, even though in this case, I think we speak about similar characteristics of the governments. Um, we share so much as a nation, as Jewish people, and the challenges are truly endless. So I really want to really segue to the conversation that we're going to have with you. And thank you, Daniel, for joining us tonight. It's so, so, so important to us. But I really want to say, not just thank you to you, but thank you for hanging in there. And not just hanging in there as leaders of your communities, hanging in there for Israel. This is truly not taken for granted. As chair of the Fund for the Victims of Terror of the Jewish Agency, going through another phase of this war, because the war started on October 7th. I truly feel it, and it's very much not taken for granted. And on behalf of Doron Almog and Yuda Seton, who could not be here tonight, and of course, on behalf of myself, I really want to thank you for being there for us, for this incredible solidarity. So with this, I want to just make sure that you know that the solidarity goes back right to you. And please make sure that after this conversation that you share with us whatever you need. We're working really day in, day out with Pnina and Shirley and the team to see what is necessary in the communities around the world. We're creating new programs, creating new webinars, new ideas, but we also need you. Let us know what you need. That's what we're here for. And thank you again to the Ministry of Diaspora for partnering with us. A big hug to each and every one of you. Thank you.
Ayala, thank you so much. You always speak from the
Thank you.
heart and also with a deep and profound knowledge and familiarity with Jewish communities around the world. So
Thank
it
you,
is very,
Sam.
very appreciated by all of us.
Thank you, Sam.
So this webinar is actually the first in what we hope is going to be a new series, bringing distinct voices of key Jewish community leaders from all around the world who will be bringing us up to speed on the realities on the ground in each of their communities. Today's session, we are honored to bring 4 of these unique voices representing the United States, France, the UK, and Spain. And before we get into this discussion, I want to note that this session is being recorded. While you guys can't see one another, we really invite you to interact with us in the Q&A and share your comments, questions, anything relevant to the conversation. And we will leave some time at the end and hopefully address a few of these questions. Now it is my huge honor to welcome Professor Daniel Aldrich, Director of the Resilience Studies Program at Northeastern University in Boston and co-director of the Global Resilience Institute. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. So maybe just walk us through these evolving realities, give us the lay of the land from your local and global research and experience.
Yeah, the escalation since the 7th of October has been extraordinary in scope. What really began as a devastating attack in Gaza expanded now into a multi-front regional conflict. And as Israel dismantled much of Iran's proxy network around the world, we began escalating then in the 12-day war back in June, striking military infrastructure in Iran. That ceasefire then shattered in February 2026 with Iranian protests and US attacks and Israeli attacks. I think what matters for us in this phone call, though, is that each escalation cycle in the Middle East brought a corresponding wave of pressure on Jewish communities around the world. that conflict came to London, Paris, Madrid, Montreal, Sydney, and Washington through media narratives, through political dynamics, through radicalization, and unfortunately, through violence. And with that landscape in view, I want to offer some perspectives from the kind of work that my lab and I do on issues of resilience and shocks. And the first is the importance of thinking about this in terms of social connections and trust, how deeply connected people are to each other, and whether those connections reach across group lines or just reinforce them. And I've done work in Israel and Ukraine and Australia, and we have seen what really matters a lot is how communities stay together during these kind of moments. We know even from the Western Negev after October the 7th, many kibbutzim evacuated together and then stayed together long afterwards, making decisions as a group, supporting each other, maintaining their routines, and preserving their identity. So the lesson I think for us on this call is pretty straightforward. Keeping people connected during a crisis is a policy choice, not an individual one. I think the second lens to look at is what I would call social infrastructure. These are the spaces where trust is built: community centers, synagogues, parks, and gathering spots. And we have seen that communities with more active spaces like this do better after shocks. So too in the Western Negev, we saw communities with more kibbutzim, moshavim active with communal life. They had the best community resilience scores that we could find. And I think the third area to think about is hope and trust, whether people believe the system around them will function and protect them, and if the future will be better than the present. We have a lot of studies again of Israel, and we found that hope was the single strongest predictor of both individual and national resilience metrics. But hope is depletable. Without deliberate investment, it runs out. So we found that ways of measuring this over time are critical, understanding where we are. And after one more section, I'll invite our panelists from the UK, France, and Spain to reflect on which of these pillars really show through in their own communities. But I want to just bring back one more idea about this community level pressure that's been building. The Tel Aviv University report just released a month ago found anti-Semitic violence last year killed 20 people in forced effort attacks in Sydney, Washington, D.C., Boulder, and Manchester. There's the highest death toll in over 30 years since the 1994 bombing in Buenos Aires. And those attackers around the world came from different ideological backgrounds. Some are white supremacists, others motivated by grievances or jihadist Islamism, and some are lone actors. But the more important story, I think, is the plateau beneath those spikes. In every Western country, the total number of anti-Semitic incidents has remained dramatically higher now than before the war. The UK gained up to 3,700 in 2025. Germany doubled its peak of incidences. Canada, Italy, Belgium, and Australia also have increments. And we have, of course, violence as well. We know across Europe, a new group that is probably a front for Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard has done firebombings and explosive attacks in Belgium, in Rotterdam. And of course, we know more recently, unfortunately, in the UK, when arsonists destroyed 4 ambulances belonging to Hatsala in Golders Green. We had the Machazeh Hadas attack there as well, the damage done there, firebombs at the Finchley Reform Synagogue, and then, of course, most recently, 2 men stabbed in broad daylight in Golders Green. So I want to underline what this resilience means then in terms of these attacks. These attacks, I would argue, target social infrastructure, synagogues, ambulances, schools, community gathering places. And these are not random targets. These are the exact institutions that my research would identify as the architecture of community resilience. So when an ambulance is firebombed, congregants may stay home from synagogue that week, and children may question whether or not to send kids to school. This is damaging the connective tissue within and without Jewish communities around the world. Here in the United States, where I am, 1 in 3 Jewish Americans reported being personally targeted by antisemitism, and half changed their behaviors out of that fear. On college campuses, 83% of Jewish students witnessed or experienced antisemitism since October the 7th, with 4 in 10 hiding their identity in public spaces. So I would call this a kind of polarizing collective trauma, sustained conflict that's reshaping the internal life of communities, not just the external aspects of how they live. Working with colleagues studying Israel and other communities, we found that trauma comes into institutions and workplaces and community organizations and can create internal fractures as well. So these same dynamics have played out in Israel. And I think also now the diaspora is seeing them. So this panel really matters a lot. I'm really appreciating the number of people here with us today. I think the research that we've done tells us what to look for. And my leaders here on the call with us can tell us what it looks like. I'll hand it back to our moderator now.
Daniel, thank you so much. That was a really, really important framing for the conversation that we're about to have. You clearly alluded to the trends that are going on in each of these communities and the importance of the leadership in responding to the realities on the ground. So I'm really pleased now that we are joined by our incredible community leaders who are the focus of today's discussion. We have with us Louise Jacobs, who is the president of UJIA, the UK's primary organization connecting UK Jewry to Israel. I think it's existed for over a century at this point, and also the deputy chair of the Jewish Leadership Council, which is a representative body for the largest Jewish community organizations across the UK. We also have with us Robert Ejnes, the executive director of the CRIF, a representative council of French Jewish institutions, with a prevalent role in combating antisemitism and racism, defending the rights and security of French Jews, and promoting solidarity with Israel, engaging in political dialogue with French authorities, and much, much more. And we have with us from Madrid, Estrella Bengio, president of the Jewish community of Madrid, who is responsible for facilitating Jewish life across Spain's largest Jewish community, including synagogues, schools, cultural institutions, and more. So thank you all for being here with us. To help us understand a bit about the diversity that we have in this room today, I would love for each of you to give us a very, very quick snapshot of your community, perhaps one or two facts that define it and the way that it has evolved, changed over the past year or so. So let's start with Louise in London.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for asking me to join you this evening. As I've already been said, I'm Louise Jacobs. I'm speaking to you from London. I think one way of describing this is I have lived a very comfortable life in London or in the UK, which has always been a very tolerant and easy place for the Jewish community to live and work. I am what I would call myself a British Jew. And up until now, these things have never been in conflict. There's never been a problem. I now am much more aware about my British identity and my Jewish identity. And I think about how those two things sit together much more keenly than I will have done in the past. Daniel has already alluded to the problems that we've had here in terms of the firebombing of synagogues, of communal organisations, of the ambulances, the 2 deaths in Manchester, the stabbings in Golders Green last week. So we clearly have a big problem that as a community and as leadership we are dealing with, and we can come on and talk about that later. And just as a snapshot, you already mentioned, Daniel, that our Community Security Trust, which is an amazing organisation and I think quite unique in the UK in terms of keeping us safe, recorded 3,700 anti-Semitic incidences in the UK in 2025. This is broken down, and I think this is interesting, into 3,000, just over 3,000 abusive behaviour incidences, 217 damage to properties, which is really high, 119 verbal threats, 170 assaults, and 4 extreme cases of violence, which includes 2 deaths in Manchester, but does not include the 2 stabbings in Golders Green last week. I would say that the community here is shocked. We're still coming out fighting. We are still leading full, vibrant Jewish lives. I think that is really important to say. We understand the challenges. We are trying our best to deal with the challenges, and we will come on to that. But we are not cowering. There are some people, quite understandably, who are thinking about leaving. But you go to any Jewish event, or you go to a rally, you go to a march, you go to a cultural event, they are still full. And the synagogues are still full, and people still sending their kids to Jewish schools, and Jewish kids on campuses are dealing with the issues, and we try and provide them the tools to do that. We are still leading vibrant Jewish lives, but it is becoming more and more challenging, and we are looking over our shoulders a lot more than we have done in the past. In terms of personal experiences, we were asked to give some personal examples. I have an office block in Hampstead, which is a leafy suburb in northwest London. October 24, that was daubed, the windows were smashed, and it was pretty horrific to look at, and did remind us of something out of Nazi Germany in the 1930s. And we had some pretty horrible slogans written on our walls. This is not because actually we housed any Jewish organizations in there. It was actually the registered office of one Israeli organization. So they did their research very carefully. We're lucky they did it at night. No one was injured. But this is just one small example of what is happening in London at the moment and, well, in wider UK. And so and that's where we are. I will later on hopefully give an opportunity to tell you what we're trying to do about it, and as leadership, how we are rising to those challenges. It is a grim picture, but as I said, we are doing our best to work with government and all types of civic institutions to help them understand. And I think I would say there is a difference between, and I feel quite strongly about this, what we are experiencing now and what we are experiencing in Nazi Germany and what they experienced in Nazi Germany. And I think this is important. We might have had a government that have made some decisions that we don't like, but ultimately they're not bad people and they are trying to do their best to keep the community safe. Now, it might be too little too late, and I accept that. But when they call a summit like they did in Downing Street today, calling together all the Jewish organizations with every member of the cabinet, they are deciding to do something about it, but it is a bit late.
Thank you so much, Louise. What you're sharing is hugely important. Of course, some of the information is, things we read in the headlines in the news all the time, but what we don't read about is how vibrant the Jewish life continues to be and that events are still full. And these are really empowering messages in the relationship with the government that we'll get onto a bit later on as well. So Louise, thank you for sharing that with us. Estrella, why don't you share a bit about what's going on in Madrid and Spain?
Well, the first thing that I would like to say, it's about a little bit of the history of the Jewish community of Madrid. So there is a huge difference when we think about the Jewish in the UK or in France, but the presence of the Jewish in Spain and in Madrid is something very recent. So the Jewish community of Madrid, which is the largest in Spain, has a little bit more than 100 years. This started with few persons coming from the Eastern European countries. Then on the 60s, some families coming from North Africa and Argentina. So I am saying that because it started in that way, and surprisingly nowadays, and despite the national political environment, there are many families from many countries coming to Madrid. And this is something which is related with the support that we have from the regional government of Madrid. I want to emphasize the fact that Spain is almost like a federal country, and there are 17 regional governments. So the regional government of Madrid is extremely supportive of the Jewish community. We have also the support of the local governments of Madrid, Alcobendas, Hoyo de Manzanares, so the places where our facilities, the cemetery, the school, the main synagogue, where we are. So it is like a contradiction on what it is happening in Spain and around the world and what it is happening in Madrid. And I'm sure that, well, the support of the regional government is making that a difference. So Jewish life in the street is almost normal. It cannot be normal as it was before October 7 because we don't feel the same. We feel that there is some threats around, but there is a clear, determination to continue having our Jewish life. And this is part of our strength. And I would like to say that we observe the growth of the number of children in the school, the young people going to the university. We have here Robert from France, and we have many students from France in a place in Villanueva de la Cañada. We have 700 or 800 young people in that university. So it's like a combination of the situation, which makes, feel us in a way that we should continue to get this growth. We are in the moment where the community is growing more than ever in these exceptional circumstances. The situation at the national level is what it is, and one of the things that we are also doing is to work at in the places and in the institutions where we can to reinforce the national plan on the fight against anti-Semitism, which was approved in January 2023 before October 7, and to adapt to the current situation, because the situation has changed. But this is something which is being hard. So in one way is being very grateful for the support that we get. In other angles, being very strong on to defend ourselves and making sure that we have all the security forces that we need to make as much as possible the life in these exceptional circumstances normal. And as Louise was saying, I am Spanish, I am Jewish, and most of the people living in our communities like that. We have this combination, and this is what we always say. As a Spanish, the reason of being Jewish should not be different to the rest of the people. We should have the same conditions, living in the same conditions in a peaceful way in normal life.
That's beautiful. I love that. Also, you touched upon this really important and interesting trend of not just the negative migration of Jews out of communities across Europe, but there are a number of regions where there's actually a growth in the Jewish community and more families moving in. So perhaps we'll speak more about that a bit later. Okay, over to you, Robert.
Thank you.
You've got to unmute yourself.
Yes.
There we go.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad to be with you tonight. And as I'm speaking as CEO of the CRIF, which is the umbrella organization of Jewish institutions in France, which is the second largest Jewish community in the world after the United States, a community which has deep roots, strong institutions, and also deep anxieties, and we'll come back to it. But to start with, and I could have said almost word by word the same thing Louise and Estrella have just mentioned about their communities. We are living we have lived since October 7 in a total paradox. The paradox because, first of all, the Jewish life is very vivid and exploding in France, with more kosher businesses, with more restaurants, with more synagogues, more Jewish community centers and schools than ever, and they're full. So people are going, they're not afraid, they're going to the Jewish places, and it's very vivid. And we have, since October 7, the feeling of Am Echad. Everybody in the Jewish community feels belonging. The feeling of belonging is much stronger than it used to be. We've seen a lot of Jews who are very far away from the Jewish community. As Estrella and Louise, I could say we are French and we are Jewish, and we'll live it without any problem. But a lot of people that were far further away from their Judaism became very much implicated after October 7. And this is so important. Now, what has changed on October 7 is that we have realized that everything that's happening in the Middle East does not stay in the Middle East and transforms immediately. It transforms into a form of anti-Semitism, and we have many forms of anti-Semitism. Some, the old ones, the old forms from the far right, from the Islam, radical Islam, but we have discovered a much stronger immediately on October 7 or October 8th, which is a political anti-Semitism. We were supporting Hamas, supporting and criticizing Israel, and this has become a real front. And like Israel is fighting a war on 7 fronts. We are living also an eighth front against the anti-Semites who try to undermine both the image of Israel and the status of the Jews in our communities. So this is also our role to react to it and to play and intervene with and we'll come back to it, with the political institutions, with civil society, in order to make sure that we remain French citizens with our full responsibilities. So it's a very interesting period to live through, and we're really feeling like we're combating the same way the Israelis are combating. We're not going on Miluim, but we're combating every day anyways.
Robert, thank you so much. And as you can see, there are various trends that match between all the different communities and also some that are specific to each region. So now that you have a sense of the amazing people joining us today and leading this conversation and the communities that they warmly represent, we are going to dive right in. So since October 2023, as we have seen, the scale of the change has been dramatic, even across the communities. In France, for example, the Interior Ministry reported thousands of anti-Semitic acts in just a few months, prompting the government to deploy tens of thousands of police, of soldiers to protect Jewish sites. In Spain, we saw that there's been a noticeable shift in the public discourse, including protests outside Jewish institutions, increased hostility in everyday interactions. But when we look beyond these media reports, what has actually changed in your community's daily life? That's what we want to hear about. What are you experiencing as pivotal leaders in your communities? And what is the feeling among the community members that you're interacting with day to day? So you touched upon it slightly in your introductions, but Estrella, maybe you want to expand on that a little bit.
Yes, thank you, Sam. So after October 7, there are many things we have changed internally, but I mean, there was a concern about the situation that we were living. But it was clear that we have the determination and the strength to continue to have our Jewish life. And what we have experienced is more unity. As Robert was saying, people that were not used to come to the community, they were sometimes on tears saying what I can do, where I can help. And there was a need to do something and to be together. We have faced situation very complicated. The very first one after October 7, and always the most sensitive point, is the school. And one of the comments was, should we close the school? And the answer was, if we close the school, when do we open? So the final decision was, we continue, we go through, and what we must do is what should be done to reinforce all the security measures, the internal one, the one with the security forces, to make sure that that we have that support. And it is essential to have the relationship with the leaders of the different municipalities where we are, to have that. And in the same way that we're talking about these aspects on demonstrations, I saw the major of the town hall of the school going to the main door of the school saying, now I feel confident, we see the national police here, now I go back home in a more secure way. So this is something which we have experienced. Also, what we have seen is more volunteers, more people that have joined the community to help us in many aspects, in many areas, and particularly on making sure that we were able to continue to have our activities. The other thing is as well that, like in other places, there are different congregations, different organizations. So the unity is not just among people, but about the different Jewish organizations being all together on one thing which was clear, to to continue to have Jewish life, and also on the fight against anti-Semitism and the support to Israel. We had the speak up on the media, on Twitter, very strong on speeches during events with regional and local authorities to make sure that our voice was listened and that our message was there. And we have in many cases had the support of the especially I always say the president of the regional government. After October 7, we organized an event on the main synagogue, and she came there to be with us and finishing her speech with Am Yisrael Chai. She even came on the day 1 year later on the eve of Yom Kippur, and also to be there and to be with us and to support us. This has been extremely important. And one important thing that we have experienced, and we talk here about the importance of Israel. Israel, it's very important, and we live very close to what happened there. And we have the visit of many hostages that came here. We embraced them, we supported them in very difficult moment. And I would like to tell you one very nice thing which happened in our community. So I am sure that, well, we know many of the persons that were there. So Mayan has her mother and 5 family members that were hostages in Gaza. She came here in October, just after October 7. And when she came back, her mother and 2 more persons of her family came back home. She came back to Madrid in February 24. And when she came, there were still 2 more persons as hostages in Gaza. And she said, I hope that the same thing will happen. And it happened. Louise and Fernando, they were relieved from captivity and they came back home. So we said, well, it is the positive energy that all these people in the community, that we were there just hoping the best for all these persons that were suffering and their families. And we have this example, which is quite relieving and give us many, a way to cooperate in these difficult times. An example was also that we have a curie and we have our song, the version of the song Habaita. And trying to be always close, trying to be always supportive, and making demonstrations and everything that was needed from our end to feel the Am Echad Lev Echad that we should be.
Incredibly empowering, and you just see how indelible these links are between the communities, between Israel and these Jewish communities. So we heard about what it looks like for a community of just upwards of 20,000 Jews. Robert, maybe share a bit about what it looks like for a community of 450,000 Jews.
Not different. It's about the same. And basically, there is a tension we need to navigate constantly. In many communities, it's the language that we will use with the community, and which is not always the same that the one we will use with the authorities. And that is not hypocrisy, it's really responsibility and understanding and sensitivity. With the community, we need to be honest about the threats, acknowledge the fear, and not minimize what the people feel in their daily life. The threat, the dangers, the fear that they would feel. And we, in order to not lose credibility with our own people, we need to talk reality. With the authorities who have not the same sensitivity, and they don't feel, and we have seen it so many times, that they do not feel the same thing that the Jews may feel about what's happening in Israel, we need to be much more precise, much more measured, strategic. We want to be, and we need to be taken seriously as partners, and not just as a community asking for protection. And that means that translating anxiety into data and translating anger into policy demands and translating grief into legislative action. This is basically what we've done. In a organization level, we've had so many events for the support of Israel and to show the unity with Israel. I'll give you an example, several examples. We had weekly meetings called the Mère de l'Espoir, Mother of Hopes, to call for the release of hostages. Every week for 2 years, exactly 2 years, we have met with hundreds of people in front of the Eiffel Tower and asking and being public and asking for the release of hostages. And this was very important. We brought in a lot of political leaders, a lot of civil leaders, many non-Jewish friends who came to bring their support to the Jewish community in France and to the sufferings in Israel, and especially for the hostages. For the 1 year after October 7, we had a major event, 4,000 people. We had half of the government came to say their support for Israel and the Jewish community. The same thing the second year, we did another event where we had about 5,000 people come and visit memorial tent and an evening in order to show their support. So this was very important for the Jewish community, but not only, very important to show our environment that we care for Israel, we care for the hostages, and we're very much concerned, and explain to the community, the national community, that we are not only a Jewish community, a religious community fearing for its future, but we're really bringing in the moral support for what was happening in Israel and the hostages. We did a lot of social media. We did a lot in the streets. We did a lot to support Israel. What's important is to manage this balance, not to alarm the community and not under-communicate with the authorities. So this is what we've tried to do, and I guess after almost 3 years, we are still in this balance of relationship. I'll insist on the many non-Jewish friends, including Muslim friends, who have come along to support, to condemn the Hamas and condemn the radical Islam and condemn Iran and Hezbollah, but and this is very important, to not just to be within the community, but also to open up to the rest of the world and show that we work and we fight for social and moral values.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And actually, we see all these questions coming in the Q&A that actually weave really nicely into the questions that we kind of set beforehand. So I think we'll sort of weave them in together. The next question that actually Jamie, our friend from Switzerland, has brought up as well is about how we are managing these relationships between different political leaders, specifically when you're approached by leaders from different political parties across the spectrum, from the Green parties, left, socialist, conservative. And one of the things I wanted to ask you, and Louise, I'll address you in this one, is how are you managing the balance between strengthening the internal cohesion within the Jewish community and its institutions, and also these external relationships with academic institutions, government bodies, different political parties, other faith groups, and so on? And how has the community leadership made a big difference in that?
Okay, thank you. First of all, we take a view that we talk to all 4 of the main political parties here in the UK. The only party that we will not engage with at the moment is the Green Party, because I don't think any of our constituents would want us necessarily talking to Zach Polanski, although he may do very well in the polls on Thursday, and that's a different issue that we have to deal with. So in order to keep the internal cohesion within the community, it is important for us as leadership to work with all the different political parties, whether that is Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem and Reform. So we are very careful when we hold events that there is a voice from all of those. Otherwise, we will upset members of our community. And we give them the same messaging. However, obviously, the Labour Party is in power, and we spend most of our time working with the Prime Minister and members of his cabinet, because they are the people that can make the decisions at the moment. Although one of the reasons we are in the problem we are in now is previous governments also haven't made difficult decisions. For example, the prescription of the IRGC. I think we are probably the only country in Europe that have not yet prescribed the IRGC, and this is something that we've been asking them to do for some time. Those sort of decisions, everybody in the community can agree on is a good idea. So what has worked? We are working much better as a community in going to government, whether it's government or actually our universities, the BBC, our media organisations, and asking for asks that A, we think are realistic, and B, that are communal asks. So for the first time, I would say in a very long time, we are working much better as a community, and we are trying to include all bits of the community, left, right, religious, not so religious. And it has taken quite a huge effort to get to where we are. But for example, when we went into number 10 today for the Antisemitism Summit, we went in as a community with a set of asks that everybody had agreed upon. That is no mean feat, as I'm sure most people here will know, that getting people together and getting them to agree isn't easy. But I think in a time of crisis, which we're in at the moment, working together is really important. The only other thing that I would add is what this has done is it is also, we are working outside what I would call the main communal organisations. A number of grassroots organisations have been set up since October the 7th, and they have added to our community in a way that we wouldn't necessarily have seen. And we are very cognizant that we should be working alongside them as well. Everybody, we believe, has a place within reason within our community, and they all add to it. So I would say as a communal body, as a community, we are working much more closely together to make sure that the asks we are asking of our civil leadership and our government are cohesive and aligned. And that has been incredibly important, and I think makes us much more powerful as a community.
Incredible. Louise, thank you for sharing that. It's super, super important. And I, of course, coming from the UK myself, hear it from a number of other factions of the amazing work you're doing in that arena. Daniel, I'd like to address the question to you, especially as someone who's deeply integrated in the academic systems. And also, while weaving in a question that we had from the audience from my dear friend Ingram in San Diego about how we're seeing the different organizations and different platforms like progressive groups, LGBTQ, I don't know, animal rights activists and others, how they are pushing for different support in the other direction and using their platforms to promote an anti-Israel agenda. So how's that looking from your perspective in the US, Daniel?
Yeah, so we are building and strengthening alliances, but not with the groups that you just mentioned. They are being built with other faith-based organizations, primarily Jewish, but also some non-Jewish ones, and also with law enforcement and security-related groups. So the number of meetings that we have with them, our engagement with the Massachusetts Antisemitism Synagogue Task Force is way up. We have other communities here we're working with in Boston, but the groups that you just mentioned, not a single one of them has reached out to us. And I don't think, as we heard from Louise earlier, our members would feel comfortable that we do, given the rhetoric from many of them has become exquisitely not necessarily just anti-Israel, but anti-Semitic more broadly. And I think this is a real challenge now that groups in the past that many left-wing Orthodox groups and Jewish groups supported are now not displaying a similar display of reciprocity and engagement on this issue. And I don't have a politician's touch, so I don't know what to do about that. But I think we have lost allies that I thought we used to have, or allies whom we supported in the past. And we are now reaching out, I think, more to mainstream groups, faith-based organizations, and security groups rather than those other groups.
Thank you, Daniel. Robert, do you have anything to add on that subject as well from the French perspective?
No, we're the same. Again, what here is exactly what we're doing. We're trying to build alliances with the groups in the civil society, and it's very important because as power is getting less powerful, we need to replace the relationship we had historically with the presidency and the government, with the strong civil society groups. And this is what we're doing, religious group, you're mentioning LGBT plus group. When we have in our, because we're a federation, we have the Jewish LGBT community, which are also a bridge to the organization. It's very difficult. Very often it's very difficult because we're facing people who condemn Israel and do not want to hear what we have to say. They just want to condemn. This is the problem with the left. And there are some people at the extra left who have made an agenda of fighting for Gaza and declaring genocide and declaring famine in Gaza, and they've done us a lot of bad will in their policy, but they know where they're going. It's a political agenda. It's very important also to strengthen the links that we have, the bonds that we have with the Republican, in the sense of the Republic parties we can speak to, and this is what we engage permanently with the different constituents of political groups and the civil society.
Thank you, Ove. So we see how different communities are leaning on different models to respond to the challenges and build resilience. And actually, our friend Nira in Sao Paulo is asking about how we can adopt practical tools that are increasingly challenged in different communities around the diaspora regarding the communications environment. What practical channels and frameworks you can suggest that maybe can help communities contribute more meaningfully in real time and in a coordinated way. And so we see that there are different models in communities. Perhaps some of you can share about beyond the physical security, but we're seeing the ramifications on mental health and the confidence within the communities and how the public is sharing its voice. And I'll just say that, the CST, for example, is an amazing model in the UK of how they're integrating a strategy of security, training, and intelligence, but as well as holding many other responsibilities in the broader arena of crisis. And also in Spain, while the community is much smaller in size, relying on tight-knit kind of community groups and networks, formal and informal channels to build their resilience. So Louise, let's address you first. You're muted.
Physical security does not build resilience. And again, the government very kindly gave us another £1 million today for more physical security in the UK, to build higher walls, more protection, but it's not the root of the problems. So we know that. And we say that to the government whilst we thank them, it's not solving the underlying issue. In terms of building resilience, as you rightly say, CST is a fantastic organisation, and some of their models, and they are very much about physical training and making people feel that they have built up some sort of tools physically should they come under attack in some way. And for many young people, the Krav Maga and the other martial arts that they teach have been a form of resilience that they have turned to, and never have their classes been busier. And I think we're also very aware that this comes hot on the heels of COVID, when a number of our young people were badly affected in terms of not being able to go to school, Israel tour, and all the normal things. So we are very aware that we need to continue to build the resilience of our young people, particularly those that go to Jewish schools that may be feeling nervous, scared, frightened. And I know that the Jewish day schools are doing a number of things about that. We are holding a rally in the UK on Sunday, and one thing that does help build people's resilience is hearing non-Jewish voices, which I feel very strongly about. And we are, for example, hoping that there will be very few Jewish voices at this rally on Sunday, and that the UK non-Jewish community and our allies will show up in force, stand there in Downing Street with us, show their support, show their solidarity, and we will have a number of high-profile non-Jewish speakers, commentators, media stars, whatever it might be, standing up in solidarity for the British Jewish community. This is really important, and this does build resilience, knowing that there are people around you that are supporting you, that don't like what's happening to the British Jewish community, that don't believe it is in line with British values. So hearing that and reading that and seeing that around us is really important and builds resilience.
Yeah, that's a huge point. And, no matter how large the Jewish community can be in a region around the world, it's still such a tiny minority compared to everyone else. And actually on this call in the audience, we have a number of our very close friends and allies who are from outside of the Jewish community. I know there are people here from Sweden and other areas who have been super supportive of the Jewish community.
So we need to thank them. And thank you, because that builds resilience, and that is incredibly helpful for, I would say, all of our communities, and something that we work really, really hard on here in the UK.
100%. Estrella, what can you share about what's going on in Spain and any models of resilience and support that the community has developed over time?
Well, I think that the situation is similar to what just has been described now. So the non-Jewish people are very important to support the communities. And we see that from the civil societies, from some universities, also from religious organizations, for human rights organizations, and also people that are part of the life of the Spanish life, the Madrid life, that they want, that they step up. Also journalists that they write very good articles, and they are showing their opinions in these situations. And we have some of the person that even they have been they had some problems because of this. So the one thing is what we say as Jewish, but what it is more important is to have the non-Jewish people close to us. This is extremely important. Of course, then what we have is the authorities, and we need to talk with at different levels. As I say, we have regional, we have local, and also we have national. When we say about safety and security, these are national authorities, and we need to have excellent relationship, and they need to understand our situation. We need their support. And when they speak out loudly and they make this commitment, this is also very important, which basically the governments, most of them, they are not part of the Jewish community.
Thank you. I see we're getting close to the end. There have been a number of other questions, and I'll address very briefly. We love it when people are asking about how diaspora communities can support Israel better in communications and otherwise. And I would say that it's an ongoing collaborative effort. We've seen over the past few years that it's not just about communities, Jewish communities supporting Israel, but also Israel supporting communities. And we're all in this together. We can have many webinars and many discussions on this going forward, but it's really got to be a collaborative effort. I would like to hand over to Professor Daniel to maybe sum up this discussion a bit and give us a few lessons learned and takeaways before we close.
Yeah, first of all, thank you all at home, and thank you all on the board for coming today. I think 3 takeaways from me, at least. One is, echoing Louise, resilience lives in the connections between people, not in walls or cameras or guards or other things like that we often look to first or are funded first by governments. And the strongest predictor of how a community weathers a crisis is not physical infrastructure. It's how connected its members are to each other, and how will they engage with and trust the institutions around them, whether they're political or religious ones. This pattern holds, I think, for Europe, America, and Israel, and I think of our listeners as well. The second is that tailored responses outperform uniform ones. We've heard how Jewish leaders in multiple countries spent time precisely and measuredly meeting over and over again with decision makers above them, beneath them, side to them, to build plans that are effective and focused with different resilience profiles, different threat perceptions, different community types. We need to match interventions to the crisis and the conditions on the ground. So there's no cookie cutter response here that will work for every country, or even in the same country, in different communities. And finally, I would say now on this call, I would encourage us all to invest in social infrastructure and the measurement of social capital and social infrastructure. How are we doing? What kind of levels of hope and trust do we have right now in our community, from our community to other places? These spaces and institutions where we build trust, synagogues, community centers, gathering places, they're the architecture that determines whether we hold together or fragment under the next shock. And unfortunately, knowing the Jewish history as well as we all do in this call, they will be a next shock.
100%. So just to give a brief sum up, thank you so much to all of you. If there's a thread running through this conversation right now, it's that these challenges are really real and really tangible, but so is the capacity for leadership and partnership and resilience across all of these communities. And I want to say huge thanks to all of you, to Daniel, Estrella, Louise, and Robert, for bringing your perspective, imparting your wisdom and your experience, and most importantly, leaving us with this message of hope and strength, and that there is, a future for Jewish communities all around the world. As we close, I also want to remind you all, and many of you have additional questions, this is an opportunity to engage with us further, that JReady does offer a wide array of tools and resources and other services to support you and your communities. And we warmly invite you to explore them at jready.org or to write to us at jready@jaffe.org. Ayala, I'm going to give you a minute to say something in just a minute.
Absolutely.
And of course, follow us on social media about upcoming webinars, seminars, trainings, and so on. And my deepest appreciation also to our team, obviously to Ayelet Nachmias-Verbin, the chair of JReady, to Shirley Gilrais, the director of the JReady platform, Lior Sharir, who directs our global network, and to all of you for joining us around the world, who miraculously are not tired of hearing my voice yet and continue to come to all of these important sessions with us. Ayelet, you wanted to say one final piece?
Of course, they listen to you because of the accent. It's so perfect. But I just wanted to say that I'm so appreciative, first and foremost, for everything you've done for the release of the hostages. It's it's like almost 8 months that they've been back, and just incredible what you've done. Personally, I know what Louise has done but all of you. So this is a good opportunity to thank you. And it was so meaningful, this webinar. So I really want to thank you, Professor Aldrich, and all of you, Estrella, Robert, and Louise. Wow. Thank you so much in every language possible, and of course in Hebrew. Toda rabba.
So until next time,
Toda rabba to you.
Am Yisrael Chai.
Pleasure.
Am Yisrael Chai.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.